Here we go. So Azun-san reminded me earlier in the week. Um, on October the 5th, some nations celebrate Bodhidharma's birthday, especially in Japan. Japan does it on October the 5th. I say that because that is the 5th day of the 10th month. Well, tradition holds it that he was born on the 5th day of the 10th lunar month, which would actually be something like early December, late November this year. So anyway, different places do it different ways, right? That's really part of the beauty of Zen, is just capture the moment right there where it is. And so this moment, we're going to join with our Zen Sanghas, at least those in Japan or that stem from Japanese traditions, and celebrate Bodhidharma today. So that was only 3 days ago that they would have celebrated his birthday. So it's a good opportunity for us to talk about some of the things that we learn about ourselves and about Zen in particular, as we look at the life of this man, the myth, the legend known as Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma, interestingly enough, he kind of stands at these crossroads of history and myth. Did he really exist? If he did he really come from South India? Was he really the third son of a king from South India who became a Buddhist monk? Did he really have this fiery red, wild, crazy beard, big bulgy eyes like we see in the statues of him that are all around the world in Zen temples? Who was this man? And what did he teach us about seeing through the illusions of the mind? Perhaps one of his most famous stories that we know of or that has been passed down was his meeting with Emperor Wu of Liang. The emperor, now let me kind of preface this just a little bit. This was probably around 450, 460, something like that, of the Common Era. And Buddhism had been in China since the 1st century. So some historians say sometime around between 60 and 70 AD, or 60 and 70 of the Common Era. So Buddhism had been in China for a couple of hundred years already when Bodhidharma showed up. But Bodhidharma had brought with him some new teachings that focused on meditation and not just on earning merit and devotion. So that kind of sets the background for his meeting with Emperor Wu. So he met the emperor, and the emperor was very proud of his many temples and ordinations and copies of the sutras that he had had his scribes transcribe. And he asked Bodhidharma, he says, "How much merit have I gained?" Bodhidharma replied, "No merit whatsoever." The emperor asked another question. Well, what is this highest meaning of the holy truth? Bodhidharma said, "Vast emptiness, nothing holy." Finally, the emperor asked, "Who are you standing before me?" And Bodhidharma answered, "I don't know." And with that, he left the court. And as legend has it, he eventually sat facing a wall for 9 years. This exchange with Emperor Wu does not reject good works. It cuts through the idea that merit or holiness or identity can be grasped, measured, or even owned. Bodhidharma's no merit is a freedom of the mind that does not cling. His vast emptiness is the openness of all things. All things arise, all things pass. And his "I don't know," when asked who he was, is the humility of someone who has dropped this need for fixed answers and this idea of a fixed self. Lessons for all of us. Now, there are lots of myths that go along with Bodhidharma's life, like Hoika, his disciple, standing in the snow and cutting off his arm and cutting down these barriers to sincerity. Bodhidharma chopping off his eyelids and to keep himself from falling asleep, from which tea plants are said to have sprung up around China. That his eyelids were the seeds for tea to grow in China. As wild as that seems, that's a legend of Zen tradition. But what does it get to? You know, he's also well known for his association with the Shaolin Temple, and where Kung Fu, martial arts discipline, becomes meditation in motion. Again, a lot of legend, but what does it teach us? Well, whether or not these whether or not these events ever really happened, whether Huayca cut off his arm, whether Bodhidharma kept falling asleep, so he says, "I'll stop that. I'll chop off my eyelids." Whether whether or not he really lived at the Shaolin Temple. These stories as to whether or not they actually happen is beside the point. In Zen, myth is not a distraction from the truth, but it's a mirror for us to practice. The story shapes the question, and the question shapes the practice. We see this a lot with koans that reference Bodhidharma. Koans that ask, why did Bodhidharma come from the West? Or why does Bodhidharma have a beard? These are not curiosities about his biography. They're not even really about Bodhidharma at all. They're doors, or as Woolman would have said, they're gateways. They ask us to examine our own motives and our own images. Why do we practice? What do we hope to gain? Can we gain anything? Or what masks do we wear? Why did Bodhidharma come from the West? This invites us to see our own lack of origin. The West becomes a pointer. Coming is not a movement of the body, but a transmission of seeing. The question asks, in effect, why do you meditate? Why do you come to the cushion? And then that crazy one, why does Bodhidharma have a beard? Invites us past form and label. The beard marks otherness or distinction. But the koan asks us to drop the label and meet what is really true beneath appearance, beneath the beard. What's there? What was there in Bodhidharma beneath his beard? These paradoxical, sometimes playful replies and responses between student and master, when the master might say, what is Buddha, or who was Bodhidharma? And the answer comes out, the oak tree in the yard, or I'm washing my feet, or a smack with a stick, or maybe just silence. These are not evasions. They are direct transmissions meant to loosen the grip of the mind. Bodhidharma is said to have entrusted the Lankavatara Sutra to Huayca, saying, everything you need to know is in this book. And that's interesting because if you read Red Pines, the writings of Bodhidharma, None of his stories actually refer to the Lankavatara Sutra. But the legend says that Bodhidharma passed down the Lankavatara Sutra to Huayka, but that's the sutra that he brought with him from South India when he came to China. And it does make sense when you look at the Lankavatara Sutra and you see what it teaches. The sutra, in the true spirit of the mind-only school, teaches that phenomena are not separate from the mind. Buddha nature is present in all things. True realization is beyond words and concepts and must be realized directly. We begin with names and appearances, with discrimination and knowledge, with I, me, you, him, her, they, whatever. We begin with discrimination, but the path leads us to suchness, to absolute truth, that direct taste of reality as it really truly is. Bodhidharma's teachings are less of a doctrine to be grasped and more of a method to just stop grasping. When we hear the koan, why did Bodhidharma come from the West? We are not invited to tally a correct answer. As a matter of fact, there may not be a correct answer, but we are invited to look deeply and ask, why do we sit? Why do we meditate? Why do we face the wall? Whether or not that is a wall of wood or plaster or bricks, or it's the wall of our own restless thoughts. When we're asked about the beard, we're invited to notice how quickly we reach for a story and to practice letting the story fall away. We sit with the questions themselves. The question becomes the practice. So we let the answers arise and dissolve. We let gestures and silence and just the simple act of sitting, facing the wall, become our teacher. Again, that wall may be an actual physical wall, or it may be that wall in our mind. We let that become our teacher. So Bodhidharma's journey is our journey, from seeking merit to resting in vast emptiness, from chasing answers to living, I don't know. Who are you? I don't know. From seeing mind as something inside our heads to realizing mind is the wholeness of reality. When we face the wall, we face ourselves. When the wall drops, we meet the world. In both, there is no separation at all. That's what we learn from Bodhidharma. So, this week of celebrating his birth, let's honor Bodhidharma, not by clinging to his image of the great giant beard and the bulgy eyes and the shoes on the back, on the stick on his sack, but by embodying his spirit. Fierce in practice, humble in realization, as Sung San would say, that don't know mind, and free in vast emptiness. Thank you.